Hello YouTube, it's Richard Lewis here again with another video. I was going to make a funny video today. I'd planned it, I'd scripted it, I wrote it all out. I was going to get up and just have a nice leisurely day and record that, do my shows later in the evening. It was going to be fun and productive. I was going to enjoy myself. And then I'm sat here, I'm having a cup of coffee, I'm going over the daily news, both in and outside of esports, because I'm cultured like that. And something was brought to my attention I had no idea about, and that is that there's a player called p1noy, the AD carry for the League of Legends team Winterfox. He's racist. I mean, he must be racist. Everyone's saying he's racist. That's how it works, isn't it? So he's obviously a racist. I'm surprised. I met Kristoffer a bunch of times. Never struck me as a racist. But obviously he is. I mean, a bunch of people who've never met him are saying he is on the internet, so it's true. So I'm shocked as anyone to learn about this. So I want to know why he's a racist. I mean, I don't associate with racists. It's very much not something I approve of. So I start looking at it, and okay, well, during a game of solo queue, he's called a Korean player, the mid laner for Team Gravity called Key. He's called him a Korean dog. Now this has been described in the resulting discussion thread on Reddit as extreme racism. I mean, it must be, again, I guess, extreme racism. And it's absolutely got to be sanctioned quite seriously. Now, again, I'm trying to put it all together, because on the one hand, I'm being told someone's a racist, and on the other hand, the evidence that's being used to characterize someone as a racist contains absolutely nothing that could be construed as a racist. So I'm a little bit confused. But what I'm finding this increasingly, when you have to plumb the depths of League of Tumblr, which is what League of Legends has become. I mean, it's all about individual feelings, individual interpretations. It's not about any sort of arbitrary, consistent standard across the board. In fact, we're now going to expand the boundaries of clear, defined terms. So racist now includes the use of the word dog. Well, we'll get into that in a bit, I think. I've got some stuff to say about that. But just first of all, I think it's ironic that a player whose name is p1noy is sort of being characterized as a racist. If you know anything about this, obviously he's Kristoffer's from Filipino descent, and the term p1noy was adopted by Filipinos. So when they traveled to the world and they emigrated to other places, it was a self-identification term. Now, that in itself, the use of the word p1noy, sometimes it's seen by some people, some Filipinos, as being derogatory, and they're super offended by it. They consider it to be a slur. Yet a lot of Filipinos are more than comfortable with using p1noy or p1nay for the feminine without any issues. It's an internal debate. So I mean, first of all, it's kind of ironic, that a guy whose very name is sort of subject to some debate about how appropriate it is as a cultural affectation is now being accused of being a racist. This is he deliberately chose that name so he could identify as being a Filipino and sort of was staying true to his Filipino heritage. Now, in the context of what happened, basically it's the classic solo queue argument. To a player has done something that another player disagrees with, an insult has been typed, and for some reason this insult seems to have really sparked a lot of ire within the Team Gravity player. He described it himself as racism on Twitter, and said, what should I do about it? Putting it out there in the public domain. Clearly he was upset about it. But I do find it interesting that people have come out and sort of typified. They've said, oh, in Korea, man, dog is a super racist term. It's super, super racist. So let's just analyse the use of the word dog and its sudden appointment to racist status. And that is, historically, the use of the word dog, it's never had a racial connotation anywhere that it's been used. Never. And if you look up the origins of the use of the word dog as an insult, it was actually used to describe, initially, as far back as we can trace, it was used to describe people who had kind of slipped through the cracks of society. So the homeless, people who were living on the streets, people of loose morals, and with addictions and that kind of thing. So it was used as a catch-all term for basically what we would now call an underclass. And the reason for that was that, again, dogs have always been viewed as being, low on moral fibre for whatever reason, that they'll eat their own poo, their own shit, that they defecate, urinate, and fuck wherever they want. And as a result, that term was sort of liberally applied. Now, when we get into sort of 17th century at times, in England in particular, the use of the word dog becomes an even greater insult, because dogs were believed to be familiars. And if you're not familiar with the concept of what a familiar is, it's an animal, very often the incarnation of a devil or demon, that is bound to someone that is performing witchcraft. So it was believed that dogs were used by witches and warlocks to carry out evil commands. So the term dog there was used to be applied to somebody who was devilish. It was very popular with traitors. Traitorous dog, if somebody was a betrayer. This ties in with the idea of Judas Iscariot and Satan as being betrayers of God. It's got biblical themes in there. So far, no racism. In India, the term dog is considered an insult. Again, it links back to that original definition, people that have slipped through the cracks in society. India has something called the caste system, which you can read up on if you're interested in it. I won't bore you about it. And because of that, when you call somebody a dog, you're effectively insulting their social standing, where they are in that system. You're implying they belong to a lower caste than they do. In Arabic countries, the term dog is used as a broad insult, and it's considered super offensive, again, but it's considered offensive because what you're implying when you call somebody a dog is that they are obedient. They do not possess the requisite levels of intelligence to be their own masters, to be in control of their own discipline. You are a dog. You are obedient to somebody else. You are subservient. So again, I'm not finding anything about race. And that's somebody who, I'm a journalist. I read upon this stuff. There's books on that shelf over there about, the origins of phrases, the origins of fables, the origins of words. I've never heard the term dog being described as a racial epithet. I've never heard of it being used in a racist context, except when it comes from somebody who's a racist. So, okay, well, maybe I don't know too much about South Korea, and perhaps I should. Now, apparently, it's super racist in South Korea, according to all of these experts that have suddenly emerged on the subject. And I had no idea there were so many people that understood cultural sensibilities in Korea. I thought they were all weeaboos. I had no idea that actually they are really intellectually attuned to the cultural sensibilities of South Korea. And I can only apologize for my own ignorance on the topic. So I used what everyone uses. I used Google, right? I mean, that's what I do. I'm not an expert like these people, so I just use Google. And I Googled it. And I looked up Korean profanity on everyone's favorite resource in internet arguments, Wikipedia. Now, in that section, Korean profanity, it says several words have linguistic and historical significance. Various words have different origins. The Korean term for dog, for example, can be used in everyday speech with no offensive connotation. When applied to a person, however, and its variants, such as son of a dog and son of a bitch, they become strong curse words that would not be appropriate for formal or polite conversation. So, okay, right? I get that it's an insult, but surely if there was a racial connotation to it, they would say there, right? I mean, wouldn't they say there that, oh, when applied to a person, it actually means race, it's a racist thing? So it's not even racist within their own cultural point of reference. So that's interesting. So I'm a little bit perplexed as to what all these experts on racism, and in particular racism in South Korea, are actually saying here. Because I'm pretty sure an independently updated, Wikipedia's not the best source for anything, but like it would be mentioned, wouldn't it? Someone would have took the time a day, it'd just be like, oh yeah, dog is racist in South Korea. It'd be there. And I've Googled it extensively. I can't find it. I can't find anybody saying the term dog is racist in South Korea. I can't find that. So if anyone can help me with that, I'm really up for learning about other cultures. A point worth mentioning as well is that in all of this clamour to categorize somebody as a racist, we are overlooking a very obvious point, and that is that there's nothing in the insult which actually pertains to race. We use this term very broad when people use nationalistic insults. When we don't actually sit and think about it, we say, oh, if you hate Germans, you're a racist. Well, no, you're not being racist, you're being xenophobic. So, and those things carry two very different connotations when it comes to what's acceptable within society. And neither are acceptable, honestly. But if you were to say, oh, he's a xenophobe, it doesn't carry the same weight as he's a fucking racist. I think that's one of the reasons why that deliberate misuse of the term racist has become so popular. It's a punch, isn't it? It's a blow. But I'm going to do an experiment, and I want people to realise this is for the purposes of an experiment, right? Just a little thought experiment for you guys watching the video. I'm not a racist. I don't need to justify that I'm not a racist. I don't need to explain I'm not a racist, but I'll say it anyway. I've got a feeling this video is going to attract some of the wrong types. So here you go. Here's the experiment. Korean dog. Right? German dog, okay? British dog, English dog, Scottish dog. These are all nationalities. Now, if the insult contains something that specifically pertained to race, I get on board with it. Black dog, black's a race, right? Ooh, that's all of a sudden, I'm not too sure about how I feel about that statement. Alright? Now, with that said, if p1noy had said, GTFO, you yellow dog, because the insult is predicated on one of the obvious aesthetic racial differences, it's a racist insult. That's the difference. He didn't say that. There is nothing that specifically pertains to race within the insult, therefore it cannot be, no matter how broad we want to expand these definitions, it cannot be racist. It cannot be. Now, one of the other arguments were made off the back of that, which we've now established isn't true anyway, but let's pretend it is. For the benefit of all of these experts, let's pretend what they said is true. Because why not, eh? I'm happy to do that. Give the dog a bone, so to speak. So let's say that dog is a racist term in Korea. Let's say it's hugely grotesquely inappropriate. One of the ways in which we used to learn about other cultures was by making mistakes. We would interact with people from far-flung lands, and we would be like, okay, well, this is how we do things, and maybe they'd be like, oh my god, wow, you do that? Oh my god, no, if you did that in China, you'd be in a lot of trouble. That's a massive faux pas, you know? And if you look around the world, we've all got our own very different set of taboos, our own very different set of values, our own set of language, and mannerisms, which are all very different from culture to culture. Now, the only way you learn to be respectful of another culture, the only way you learn what their flashpoints are, what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate, is almost by making the mistake. It's what we used to call putting your foot in your mouth. That's what we used to do. And it was okay. It was okay to make that mistake once, or even twice, provided you learned about it and didn't do it again. Oh, right, sorry, man. Like, I forget in Korea that's like a bad thing to do. Like, really sorry, because we're not in Korea right now, so sorry. And I'm not Korean, so how would I know? I'm really sorry, though. Now that I understand that, I will be mindful of that next time. And that's how you grow as a human being. And that's how we can all break down cultural barriers. With just a little bit of, okay, well, you weren't to know, I'm sorry. A little bit of give and take, you know? A little bit of give and take. Give and take doesn't seem to be applied here. And I don't get why it isn't. I'll give you an example from Kristoffer's origins. You ever done this to anyone? Like, you ever done that? Massive taboo in the Philippines. If you do that to a waiter, that is like considered really, really bad. And that's because it's like you're beckoning an animal. There you go. Who knew? I didn't know. Just found that out today. Be sure not to do it if I'm ever in the Philippines. You see the point? Probably not. I don't know. You've either already made up your mind on this issue, and I just feel it's really horrible to categorize somebody as racist. Internet forums, you may want to think that they're transitory. That lasts forever. That lasts forever. When you characterize somebody as a racist, that's not going anywhere. And I think you absolutely have to be real nailed on about what a racist is before you apply that label. That can harm future employment prospects. That can harm future relationships. That can just be really hurtful to somebody directly in and of themselves. Now, and this is the irony, again, inherent in this system. Oh, look, somebody has said something that has hurt somebody's feelings. Let us brand them as this, which may or may not hurt their feelings, but who cares about their feelings? The only feelings that are important are the feelings of this individual who was initially wronged. That's how witch hunts work. That's what's going on here. Now, interestingly enough, and just as a final point, I want you to think about everything that's been said. I want you to think about the Reddit thread that was like, this is extreme racism. That's how Keen's taken it. I want you to think about Keen on Twitter and how he said, someone's being racist to me, what do I do? I want you to think about the furor and everybody saying this is an outrage, something needs to be done about this. And then I want you to look at Keen's Twitter. Because on May the 30th, not that long ago, he replied to Lustboy, who tweeted, "So many of my dogs are coming tomorrow, but no Winterfox Helios, the god of dog." And of course, Lustboy's Korean. Now, alright, fair enough. Maybe there's two different kinds of dog, whatever. But Keen replies to that with Lust Boy equals Noob Dog. Now, it seems to me that if dog was in itself an inherently racist and upsetting term to Koreans, I don't think you would be using it so liberally, so flippantly. And I certainly hope we're not getting to a debate where, for all the reasons I've just listed, the word dog is now some sort of taboo and we don't get to use it anymore. We being everybody that is whichever group wants to appropriate the word dog entirely for themselves. It seems ridiculous. The term dog doesn't have the same history as the N-word. It doesn't. You can't retroactively pretend it did. So, using the term Korean dog, while I agree it's an insult, while I agree it's offensive, while I agree it is clearly upset Keen, and while I agree an apology is appropriate, what I do not agree with, what I cannot agree with, what I will not agree with, is that all of a sudden this is some huge racist scandal that's going on in our midst. Korea hasn't been insulted. Koreans haven't been insulted as a group. There is no inference that Keen himself is somehow racially inferior to anyone else. He's been called a dog because of the way he played a computer game. And I just think we need to really keep it in perspective. Kristoffer has apologised. It perhaps wasn't the best apology. I think what Kristoffer will learn is, and what a lot of young esports professionals and people who live their lives on the internet will learn, when these things arise, the best thing to do is issue an apology, be it sincere or not, and just basically admit to whatever you're being accused of. It's like they just come in, and the Spanish Inquisition shit, they just come in and say, confess, 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 confess. And until you accept what you're accused of as being actually what you did, it's just going to get worse. It always does. So, with that in mind, I think it's a real shame. First of all, that this had to happen and blow up. Second of all, that it had to be made public. And most importantly, I think, third, is the point that if there is some special cultural significance to Korean people about the use of that word, then how do people who have never experienced that firsthand, how do they learn about it? Perhaps a private conversation between the two of you after the game, saying that term is really unacceptable. I am really upset right now. Resolve your problems like adults without a bunch of people who are in the middle, who are posing for their own political, if you like, ends. It's all about who can be. You'll have people on one side who are like, well, this is an outrage. This represents another infringement on white man's rights. And I'm definitely not saying that. Like, fuck those guys. They're idiots. And you'll have other people at the other extreme saying that this is the most racist thing that's ever happened. And why can't white people just learn to be, super sensitive of everyone else's needs, desires, and why are we a plague on the world, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like just a competition between these two extremes to see who can kind of one-up each other. I'm not interested in that. The reality is that this being characterized as a racial attack is not only pathetic within the context of what happened, it actually undermines real racism, and racism that people experience every day, and racism that we still haven't abolished in allegedly civilized countries. So hopefully we can all just relax, realize that this is a offensive, arguably inappropriate attack in the heat of the moment. The cultural signifiers weren't to be known, even if they exist at all. And an apology and a fucking handshake is what used to solve things like this back in the day. This isn't racism. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. See you on the next video.